Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you're watching this video. I want to say welcome and thank you for joining me on my channel called Faith to Faith. My name is Louise Calix, and again, I'm so happy you're with me watching this video at this time. I hope you had an excellent week. I pray that, you weren't bothered. I pray that the Spirit of God was evident to you this weekend. He's walking with you. He's talking with you. He's leading and guiding with you. That's my wish and prayer for you. So let's plunge right in. 2 weeks ago, I actually made a video. I concluded it, I finished the video, and really all that was set to do was just publish it, which is pretty much the easiest part of the process, just publish it. And I cannot tell you why, but just that I felt that either it was the wrong time or maybe the video wasn't complete, like something was missing. So I kind of just hung around and didn't do anything. And it was interesting because my husband, who's so very supportive about everything, every endeavor that I undertake, and he's pretty much my accountability partner, was looking at me like, hey, you did this video, which is the hardest part. Like, why haven't you published it yet? And I had to explain to him, I don't know what it is, but something is holding me back. And I typically listen to that because I could have been missing something important that I needed to add, or maybe the timing was off. But regardless, I just kind of stayed back and didn't do anything. It wasn't until about yesterday where I felt the Lord kind of like speak to me and tell me, like, yeah, the topic is the right topic, but I want you to come from it from another angle. I actually wanted you to share the dream that I gave you a few months ago. I was like, ugh, okay, Lord. But I believe in being obedient. So that's what I'm going to go and do because I never know who really needs to hear something that the Lord shared with me. So regardless, that's what we're going to do. So before I really tell you about this dream that I had and what I think it means and how it's connecting to the topic I wanted to just share about today, I just wanted to give like a scriptural context for what we're going to talk about. So recently I was impressed to go and read the book of Daniel. And what I love about the Bible is that you could read it how many times over. You could read these books, these chapters. You could read through the whole Bible several times and read it again and still obtain a new revelation, a new layer of truth and understanding that really influences and transforms your life for the better. So I'm going to be honest, when I started to feel impressed to read Daniel, I was kind of like, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, I kind of of course, I have an idea of what the book of Daniel is about. So I was thinking, what am I going to get from this really prophetic book? But truly, just reading the first few chapters already, I was just seeing so many new, rich truths to it. So in Daniel, for those who know the story, and for those who don't, basically is about Israel being in a time of exile. Now, because of their disobedience to God, because they turned to other false idols and false gods in their lives, God removed his hand of protection and he allowed them to be taken captive by the nation of Babylon, a nation that did not believe in God, a nation that believed in multiple gods, but he allowed them to be taken by them. And amongst those were, of course, royal families as well, royal and noble families. And in fact, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, actually stated, he told his chief of staff person that, hey, why don't you take the young men from the royal family of Judah and from other noble families and bring them in. Choose the best, the brightest, the best looking, and teach them in the ways of the language and literature of Babylon. Teach them so that they can go into royal service and be wise men to kind of help me as I make major decisions. And as we know, Daniel and his three friends, his three Hebrew friends, they were a part of those who were taken to learn the ways of Babylon. So literally, you know, so many things happened in that process that truly King Nebuchadnezzar was able to see the Spirit of God within Daniel and his friends. And the most evident, of course, was when King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and he wanted interpretation, but it was a bit more complicated than that. He not only wanted interpretation, he wanted his wise men, his magicians, his astrologers to tell him what he dreamed, because he knew he dreamed a very important dream, but he could not remember the dream. And he literally was like, upon threat of death, if you don't, not only tell me what I dreamed and then tell me the interpretation, every one of you is going to die. And Daniel knew who to turn to. He knew that he needed to turn to the God who literally was able to reveal mysteries, to ask for the interpretation, or his life and the lives of the other astrologers, magicians, and wise men were all in danger. So, of course, as we know the story, he was able to reveal the dream, not only the interpretation, but reveal the dream, which is simply amazing. But as a result of Daniel's using his spiritual gifts, Nebuchadnezzar basically became a believer. He was in awe and he literally believed upon God, the Most High God, Jehovah, the Hebrew God, as he called him. And that is so, so, so incredible. I want to really read the verse that really struck me, because it was like, wow, look at how the power of God can be revealed through something as a gift of interpretation of dreams. Daniel 2:20, and it says, I just want to read it for you because I just think it's a powerful, powerful prayer. He says, "Praise the name of God forever and ever, for he has all wisdom and power. He controls the course of world events. He removes kings and sets up other kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the scholars. He reveals deep and mysterious things and knows what lies hidden in darkness, though he is surrounded by light. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors, for you have given me wisdom and strength. You have told me what we asked of you and revealed to us what the king demanded." I love that. He's speaking the attributes of God, and he's saying that you control the course of world events. You remove kings and set up kings. You give wisdom to those, you give wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the scholars. I mean, it's truly, truly a beautiful prayer, just proclaiming the attributes of who God is. And I just want us to keep in mind how much we can be used as tools like Daniel to really transform the hearts and minds of unbelievers when they see the undeniable power of God, okay? Through something as simple as interpreting dreams or something of that nature. So that's the scriptural context, okay, for what I'm going to share with you. And then I'm going to share the dream that I had. And at the end, I'm just going to bring it all together to connect with what I think God wants to share with his children in this time. So here's the dream that I had. And I actually had this dream the 3rd of January, 2022 of this year, on January 3rd, 2022. I do dream a lot. I didn't dream as much as I did before 2020, but when 2020 hit, it was like a floodgates, and I have been kind of a dreamer ever since then. I just have a lot of dreams that I believe are significant, and that God is communicating. But let me share the dream that I had. January 3rd of 2022. And I wrote the dream down. I'm not going to read it word for word. I'm going to paraphrase it, but I did write this dream down and I recorded the date. So basically, in this dream, I basically had a dream within a dream, which is something I've never had before. That was pretty unique. It was a dream within a dream. the context of the first dream, or the main dream, was that I was at a funeral. I was at a funeral of a young man who used to be in the church that I went to during my childhood. I'm not going to tell these names. I didn't ask these people for permission or anything like that, so I'm not going to share the names, but I'm going to tell you what they represent. So I was at his funeral. And you know how funerals are. It's not exactly the service, but maybe after the funeral service, people are just milling around everywhere, talking to another in different little groups and pockets and different things of that nature. So I was observing everything. It was his funeral. I definitely saw a casket. I knew I was in a funeral. But there was another young lady who also went to that same church during my childhood. She played a really prominent role in the funeral. And it was interesting because I was wondering why she was playing such a prominent role, because we know that in funerals, a prominent role, or like a role of honor, is usually left for the families of the deceased. So it would be like the wife of maybe a husband who passed away. It would be the children of a father who passed away. It would always be something like that. They would be pretty much the prominent roles, or they're the coordinators of the funeral, because they are the ones that set up the funeral for their beloved. So she played a prominent role, definitely going around talking to different people, going around and just engaging and basically working the room. And I was very interested by that. But regardless, that's what happened. And then I am very, actually, I'm pretty cool with the young lady that was playing the prominent role, but I didn't engage her the way I typically would, which tells me she wasn't really herself in the dream. She didn't represent herself. She represented something else, because I was kind of more an observer of the situation rather than interacting in the dream. But let me continue. So I had a group of people around me as well. And I couldn't really recognize the faces, but I just knew it was a group of people. And I was sharing with them about a dream that I had. And again, that's why it's a dream within a dream. And I was sharing with them, hey, I had a dream that, and as I was telling them, I was experiencing the dream in the dream. Okay. So I said I was right in front of a horse, and the horse was very close to me. Almost like we're facing face to face. The horse is on the other side facing me, and to the point where I could basically, if the horse breathed on me, like I would experience the breath of the horse. We were very close, and we were just looking at one another. And the horse was basically dark gray, but not black. Dark gray horse, but not black. And that was pretty much the end of the dream. I was telling the others in the funeral that I had a dream about a horse. I woke up from that dream and I was kind of like, what does that mean? And at first, that's kind of what I do with the dreams when I'm trying to understand it. I'll pray, and then I will try to look for clues as to what the dream can be. And sometimes when I look for clues, something will feel like right, it will click, and I said, hey, I'm onto something. I'm getting closer to the interpretation. Or I'd be like, no, that's not it. And at first I took it literal, because I started to worry. Is there something happening with this young man? Should I be like contacting him? I don't know. But I typically don't have to do that in dreams. So I was wary of that. But it was to the point I was like calling up my sister and saying, hey, did so and so used to date? Why would she have a prominent role in my dream? That's what I was thinking, like that, with this young man. What was the connection between them? But then what I decided to do is look up the meaning of their names. That is something I do very often when I have a dream, because I find that the names have messages that I need to know. And that's how God speaks to me a lot of times. Not all the time, but a lot of times God will speak to me by giving me the message through the name of the person and telling me what they represent in there. So I looked up the name of the young man first in the dream, and his name meant divine peace. And it was really interesting because I would have never associated his name with divine peace. If his name was like Solomon or Salome or something like that, it would have clicked to me like, oh, peace, it means peace. But his name was a regular name. And I never knew that there was an association with the word divine peace. But soon as I saw that it was his name represented divine peace, I knew, okay, I'm kind of on track here. So divine peace. Then I looked up the young lady's name who was roaming around and played a very prominent role, and her name meant war. And her name was actually connected to the god of war. Okay. And God, little g. I'm talking about like Greek mythological stuff. This is how people connected it. So I knew that her name really represented war. I was like, wow. So I'm at the funeral of divine peace, and war is taking a prominent role in working the room. Very, very interesting. Then, as if to get more interesting, I looked up the meaning of horses biblically, but I kind of had a feeling because I remember about in Revelation, they talked about the four horses, and I kind of knew it was connected to the apocalypse or something of that nature. But I really looked it up, and definitely a horse is horse is typically a biblical symbolism of war. And I turned to Revelation where I knew it talked about horses, and I'm going to pull that up for you as well to read it. That's in Revelation 6:4. Excuse me, I'm just pulling it up. Revelation 6:4. I'm going to actually read it from the King James Version. Revelation 6:4. Actually, I'm just going to start at 1, 6, 1, and then go on. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw and beheld a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and behold." I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." We're at 7 right now, and it says, "And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." Listen, I went back and read that. I was like, oh, Lord, have mercy. I was very happy that I didn't recognize any of the colors from my dream. I can't say the horse in my dream was a black horse. It was definitely more of a dark gray. So I felt kind of relieved, actually. However, something made me really go and do a little bit more research about the word pale. What is pale representing? And literally, pale could represent so much things from like a pale green to like, different shades, because it's pale meaning it's sickly, shades of white. And I realized dark gray could be equal like ashen, because I saw the word ashen, ashy. And I looked up the word ashen, and it was like shades of gray. So I was like, oh boy, great. The worst one, the horse of death. And I was like, okay, wonderful. Not what I wanted to hear. So, anyways, I had that dream, and honestly, I may have prayed about it, but not too intensely, because when I looked around at things, I didn't see any indications that U.S. was going to be involved in a major war or anything of that nature. So I thought it's fine, and I didn't feel any crazy sense of urgency. And to this day, I'm saying I'm still not sure. And I want to clarify that I'm not saying my dream is an indication of war coming to the United States or anything of that nature. I'm not really sure. In fact, the only reason why this dream came to my remembrance again is I realized, okay, Ukraine and Russia are now in a conflict. Russia has invaded Ukraine, and I was thinking about my dream. I was like, wow, maybe that was it. I'm not too sure. But then it was yesterday. My sister, my sister literally just said, "Hey, you realize like we might be in the midst of a coming World War III, right?" And it really hit me because I was like, "Wow." I'm like, "That's true." And I'm not saying that's gonna happen. I don't know. I can't predict the future. I know a God who does, but I sure don't. But just the gravity of even a comment like that, I was like, "Wow." And I said, "Wow, Lord, you gave me that dream. I mean, what what does it like what am I supposed to do with it? What was the point of you sharing that? If there's nothing that you don't want me to do about it, like what am I supposed to do?" And that's when I realized, I probably just need to do just what I was doing in the dream, which was to just share. And I realized, hey, you do have a YouTube channel. And maybe you didn't think this is what you were going to do on your YouTube channel, but God has given you an avenue and an outlet. Now, I do say that over the past couple of weeks, this theme has been coming over and over in my mind about what are we as children of God accountable to be doing when such things are going on in the world. And even for me, I felt very rebuked by this dream several times because I remember having this dream since January. And now with the crisis between Russia and Ukraine happening, I rebuked myself one day, or it's the spirit actually, that, you know what, Louise, you were given an indication of some kind of war. You need to be praying for the people of Ukraine, pray for the people of Russia. There's an accountability for you as a child of God to intercede. And that's what I've been doing. But then this came again where I think God took it a step further, was like, yeah, and also share. So I have told you again that I am not sure if the dream that I had was indicating that this is the war with Ukraine and Russia, I don't know, or it might be a war to come that is really going to impact, where we are here and now in the United States. I do not know. I'm not claiming that at all. I am not blessed to be as good of a dream interpreter as Daniel or Joseph. It's something I have to pray about to to develop in that skill. However, I want to share what I feel that the Lord is sharing, though. I do want to feel what the Lord has made sense in my heart as to what I need to do, and probably what we all as children of God need to do as a corporate body or and individually as well. My topic in the last video I made that I never published was about unbelief. It was about unbelief. And as Christians, we have a very specific type of unbelief. Because the issue is when it comes to the world, we have a not my business mentality. We have a not my business mentality because it's not in my backyard. It's not in my neck of the woods. And if it's up to us, we feel that we have to have a complete separation between the events that are going on in the world. When it comes to the parable of the talents, we act more like the servant that had one talent. That's what I was talking about in the last video, but it's still really applicable and relevant to what I'm sharing right now. I'm going to turn to Matthew 24:14 because it shares that story of the parable of the talents. And a lot of you might have heard it, but I just want to give a brief outline for this as well. It's really an important matter for us to look into. It's Matthew 25. That's why I was confused. Matthew 25:14. Matthew 25:14 is talking about the parable of the three servants. So basically, it's talking about a man or a ruler that literally went on a long trip. And before he went on a long trip, he said, "I'll come back." But he had three servants and he gave them gifts. He gave them talents. And he said, "Hey, these are the gifts, okay, that I'm giving you." And he gave one servant 5 bags of talents or 5 bags of silver, whatever it is, money, 5 bags. He gave another servant 2, and he gave one servant, the last servant, 1. He gave him 1. So he went away. And when he came back, he was asking for an account of the gifts that he had left, of the talents that he had left. Now, the servant who had 5 was busy away at work producing. And when the master came back, by the time he came back, he had 10. He had doubled. He had doubled the amount that the master had given him. He had 10 bags of talents or silver, whatever it may mean, money. To the one that had 2, he also went to work and he had 4 when the master came. He doubled his amount. But only the last servant, he had only the 1 because he had buried it. So for the first 2 servants who doubled their money, the master was full of praise. He had only praise to give them. And he said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." However, when he addressed the one servant that hid the money and only had the money to give him back, the servant replied and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back." For us as Christians and children of God, we kind of have this mentality when it comes to the gifts that God has given us and our operation in the world. I think we look around and we see so much evil and corruption, and our main goal is to basically stay pure, uncontaminated, and corrupt from the world. So a lot of times we take our talents, and I don't just mean regular talents, I also mean like our spiritual gifts. That's really what I'm focused on, spiritual gifts. And we don't feel like we need to use it for the world because we're like, you guys are going to hell in a handbasket anyway, so I'm just going to stay here and stay uncontaminated until the Lord comes. And what happens, we think that when Jesus Christ comes back, we're going to pop out of hiding and say, "Look, Lord, we kept ourselves untainted and uncorrupted." And we're going to feel that God is going to give us a pat on the back and say, "Good job for keeping yourself hidden all this time." And that's not going to be the case. In fact, what he said is, "You wicked and lazy servant, if you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." And he said, then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where they will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." This is just a heavy story. It's a heavy parable, and it really makes us accountable. We need to be careful with the mentality that whatever happens in the world is of no concern to us. It doesn't matter because we're just waiting for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ to present ourselves uncorrupted and pure and uncontaminated to us. That's not what the Lord said. In John, he said, I send them out into the world. They are not of the world, but I'm sending them out into the world just like Christ came into the world. Christ really, if anyone could say that I need to stay uncontaminated, I need to stay pure and untainted, it would be Jesus Christ. He was in perfection. He was in heaven and in his kingly authority. But he came down into our world and was really in our mess. And for us, we feel that we can't, we're not supposed to do that. And so we have spiritual gifts that we're supposed to be using to influence and impact the world. But instead, we're just trying to run and hide. And the Lord is not pleased with that. We're not supposed to be running and hiding so afraid that we can either have no impact or the evil is just so great that it's going to overtake us. Daniel was an excellent example of that. He was literally in Babylon being taught the literature and language of the Babylonians, but he was so entrenched in the power of God that he made a mark, he made an influence. And because of his example and his connection to God, he was able to take King Nebuchadnezzar and through his example, King Nebuchadnezzar became a believer. Okay. He had through Daniel and his friends, the three Hebrew boys, literally, Nebuchadnezzar had a testimony. And he proclaimed to all those in his lands that if anyone would talk bad about the Most High God, they would be torn limb from limb. That's how much he became so convinced in the authority and power of the Most High God. And we are all supposed to be Daniels upon this earth. We're all supposed to be influencing politics. We're supposed to be influencing our organizations and being a sound counselor to CEOs and sound counselor to different people that need us as we go about in the world. But the problem is we like to compartmentalize God. We like to compartmentalize his influence. And that's what the servant said. He said, I know you're trying to reap where you did not sow. There's so many layers of understanding to what he's saying that. But for me, what I got when I read it was that he's like, why are you trying to take rewards from someplace that you're not supposed to be in? He's trying to say that's not your domain. So don't try to take rewards from that. And in actuality, that's what we say. We like, Lord, God is not in this domain. God is not in that domain. So therefore, there's no rewards. There's no fruits we can gather from being in certain domains because God is not in that. And we've all been there as Christians, when it comes to different areas of study, different areas that you may have a dream and they tell you, don't do that. That domain is not of God. If you want to be a lawyer, they're like, oh, all they think is one thing. And they're like, oh, it's a bunch of criminals and different things of that nature. Don't go into that area. If you're interested in politics or something like that, they're like, that's not of God. You Christians don't go into those domains and areas. And that's just a wrong thinking. When I look at the human body, I can imagine, right? We are full of good bacteria and bad bacteria. I can imagine if the good bacteria in the body decided, hey, let's just stick together. Let's just stay connected together and just stay here so that the bad bacteria doesn't corrupt or contaminate us. You would be a sick person. You would die because your good bacteria refuses to do the work that they're supposed to do by spreading out into the body so that the bad bacteria doesn't overtake and overwhelm the body so that sickness develops. They're supposed to spread out. If there's a domain where there is only darkness, that's where God is calling us to be because we are light, and it's not supposed to be a light that's hidden. We're supposed to go out there and be a light. Now, let me clarify. If God does not call you into a domain, into an area, I'm not telling you go in there because it won't be good. If you do not have the power of God working through you, in motivating you, that is empowering you, I dare not go anywhere where the Spirit of God is not empowering me. But if God is calling you to something and you know it's God, do not let fear or traditional mindsets or the understanding of men and the opinions of men influence you that God is not calling you into that area. God will use you like a Daniel to do mighty works and mighty feats for him. We need only trust in the Lord. So even though unbelief, we only think of unbelief as like, oh, I don't believe in God. But there are many domains and areas that we as Christians are exhibiting really a sense of unbelief, a spirit of unbelief that God can't operate in this way. God can't do this. God is compartmentalized into a box. We need to take God out of the box in this season. Now, what am I saying that you should do? Not everyone is called to everything. Not everyone is called to an area. I'm not asking you to just go out and decide, I'm going to go save the world. But I think what is important in the season, I don't know how things are going to develop, but I can tell that things are going to get mighty complicated in the world. This is not the beginning. Ukraine and Russia is not the only thing that's going to happen. It's simply the beginning of sorrows. The Bible says that. There's so many complex things that are going to happen in the world. It behooves us as Christians to ask God, where is my assignment? Where is my role? What do you want me to do right now and in this season? And again, he might not say, go and save the world, but he literally might give you a little thing he wants you to do in this season. A couple of months back, I felt he impressed, start a YouTube channel. I had to be obedient to that. And many, many, many years before in 2020, when I started getting a lot of dreams and revelation, what I did is start writing my dreams. That was a first step to getting more because I was stewarding what he was giving me. And it helps in developing the spiritual gifts. We need to be developing our spiritual gifts and asking God to develop them, make them stronger, and asking for more, because that's what the Bible said. We should covet the spiritual gifts of the Holy Spirit. Those gifts are what is going to make us effective to be used as tools for God to convince an unbelieving world that there is a God who is sovereign over all the earth. And it makes me think, are we being accountable to the gifts that God has given us? When he comes back and he asks for an account, what are we going to tell him? Some of us, it's just a matter of we don't care. It doesn't touch our background. It doesn't touch our families and our homes and our lives, so we don't care. But honestly, the more we steward what God has given us, the more responsibilities he gives us. Maybe your responsibility is to pray for your little cousin who has backslidden. And then, God will increase it that I'm calling you to intercede on behalf of nations. There is a great work that God has for us. We cannot hide in a corner and we cannot feel that these things don't impact us. They do impact us because we have a God that's going to hold us accountable with how did we use our spiritual gifts. I'm not just talking to anyone listening to this. I'm talking to myself as well. And that means if I get a dream, I need to continue seeking and knocking until I understand it, or until God tells me, wait, the revelation is for an appointed time. Wait on it, it's coming. But sometimes I need to pursue further and say, Lord, what is this? What does this mean? And what am I supposed to do about it? It's interesting when I look at Nebuchadnezzar. When he got the dream, he didn't even remember what the dream was, but he knew it was important. And he got so persistent and furious that he was ready to kill some people in order to get the revelation. We don't need to go that far, but I think we need to have that type of persistence where we're saying, like, God, speak to us and tell us, what is the assignment? What is the role that you have called us in these times? There is a war going on. Even if it's not a physical war, there is a spiritual war going on. what are your marching orders? What has God commanded you to do? And if it's a small thing or anything of that nature, do it, because you don't know how that's going to basically be the stepping stone for greater commands that he's giving you. And we have a responsibility to develop, to grow in our spiritual gifting so that the Lord could truly use us. And he's showing that he's using people. I mean, it's amazing. You know, recently we had the first Black woman being nominated as a Supreme Court Justice of the United States. Now, it's amazing and exciting and wonderful that this is the first Black woman nominated to the Supreme Court. However, more so than that, she's a believer. That means God is going to have someone in that position that he is able to influence for his purposes and for his glory. That's amazing. And that's where we all want to be. We want to be used by God. So I pray that this has been helpful. I pray that this has been a rousing call for everyone. It has been a wake-up call that the time is serious. The times in which we live, they are perilous times, but that doesn't mean it's a time to go, run, and hide. It is literally the time when we need to ask God, where is my assignment? Where do you want me to be a Daniel? What do you want me to do? What am I supposed to develop in this time so I could be useful for the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven? God bless you, everyone. I pray that this has been helpful. I pray that you've received the point of this message, that it's really about, let's stop the spirit of unbelief, that God has not called us to be a thermostat in the world, not a thermometer reading the temperature, but a thermostat where we set the atmosphere of heaven into every room that God gives us the ability to walk through, that we are bringing heaven to this earth, and we're literally influencing kingdoms and nations for the glory of God. Love you. God bless you, and have a wonderful, wonderful week.